My name is Lauren. I'm 33 years old. 3 days ago, I sat in a lawyer's office, read a single piece of paper, and smiled so wide the attorney put down his pen and asked if I needed a glass of water. My parents hadn't spoken to me in 2 years. Not a birthday card. Not a single text. Then their lawyer sent me one document, one page. They needed my signature to sell my grandfather's lakeside cabin, the only place in the world that ever felt like home. That document was supposed to take something from me. Instead, it reminded me that someone had already made sure I was protected. Before I tell you what was in that letter, let me take you back to the beginning. To the Thanksgiving dinner that ended everything. I grew up near Asheville, North Carolina, in a town where everybody waved at everybody, and your business was never really your own. My father, Richard, was a loan officer at the local credit union. Respected man. Firm handshake. Always wore pressed shirts to church on Sundays. My mother, Patricia, ran the church's hospitality committee and organized the annual harvest potluck. Together, they looked like the kind of parents you'd see in a frame at a department store. And then there was Allison, my little sister, 3 years younger and somehow always 3 steps ahead in my parents' eyes. Allison got dance lessons. I got told I had 2 left feet anyway. Allison got a used Toyota for her 16th birthday. I got a bus pass and a suggestion to ask around about part-time work. Allison had the bigger bedroom because she needed space to practice. I shared a wall with the laundry room and learned to sleep through the spin cycle. I'm not telling you this for pity. I'm telling you because it matters. My parents never hit me. They never screamed at me. They just allocated me differently, like I was a budget line item they could trim without consequence. My father had a phrase he used whenever I brought it up. He'd set down his fork, look at me like I was being unreasonable, and say, "Allison needs more help. You're the capable one, Lauren. That's what I like about you." I believed him for a long time. I wore capable like a badge. I worked double shifts at a diner through high school, paid for my own prom dress, bought my own textbooks. It took me years to understand that in my father's vocabulary, capable didn't mean admirable. It meant low maintenance. It meant she won't complain. It meant she's not worth the effort. I was the first person in my family to graduate from college. A degree in finance from the state university earned while working 30 hours a week at a tax preparation office. 4 years, no help, no co-signer on my student loans. Just me and an alarm clock set for 5:15 every morning. My parents said they'd come. My mother picked out the outfit she'd wear. My father asked what time parking opened. I reserved 4 seats. 2 for them, 1 for Allison, 1 for my grandfather Walter, who was the only person who never once made me feel like an afterthought. The morning of graduation, my phone rang at 6:45. "Something came up," my father said. "Your sister's moving into her new apartment, and she needs help with the furniture." I stood in my dorm room holding a pressed blouse and a pair of heels I'd bought on sale. I could hear my mother in the background asking Richard where the packing tape was. "It's just a ceremony," my mother called out. "You already have the degree, honey." I walked across that stage alone, sat in a row of strangers' families, took my own photo using the timer on my phone propped against a bench. That afternoon, my phone rang again, but this time it was Grandpa Walter. "I'm proud of you, Lauren," he said. His voice was rough around the edges, the way it always got when he was trying not to cry. "And don't worry, I already took care of it." I didn't know what he meant. I figured he was talking about a graduation card, maybe a check tucked inside. I wouldn't understand what Grandpa Walter meant that day for another 6 years. I met Sam when I was 25. He was rewiring the office building where I had just started as a junior accountant. I heard him before I saw him, humming some old country song under his breath while crouched beneath a desk, his tool belt sagging low on his hips. Sam was an electrician, licensed and bonded, running his own one-man operation out of a second-hand van with his name stenciled on the side in faded blue paint. He worked 12-hour days, sometimes 14. His hands were calloused, his boots were scuffed, and on our 3rd date he showed up with a paper bag of oranges from a roadside stand because, he said, the grocery store flowers were overpriced and already half dead by the time you got them home. We got married when I was 27. Small ceremony in a friend's backyard. Just a handful of people. No big reception. No expensive dress. Grandpa Walter had passed away 2 years earlier, and I still felt the silence he left behind every time something good happened, and I could not call him. My parents came to the wedding, but they did not stay long. My mother spent most of the afternoon checking her phone. My father shook Sam's hand once, said, "Congratulations," in the same tone he used to approve a routine loan application, and then stood by the punch bowl with his arms crossed until it was time to leave. At a family dinner the following week, my father sat at the head of the table, looked at Sam across the pot roast, and said with a kind of quiet certainty that makes you question whether you actually heard it right, "I thought you would have set your sights higher, Lauren." An electrician. That is not what we hoped for. My mother pressed her lips together and said nothing. Allison scrolled through her phone without looking up. Sam did not react. He just kept eating, calm as anything, like my father had commented on the weather instead of the value of his entire career. On the drive home, he stared ahead at the dark road and said, "I do not need your dad to be impressed by me, but I need him to treat you right." I wanted to cut contact right then. I almost did. But Grandpa Walter had only been gone 2 years, and something in me kept holding on, some stubborn belief that he would want me to keep trying, keep showing up, keep being the capable one. So I stayed, for a little while longer. The next few years were quiet on the surface. Sam's business grew. He hired a second electrician, then a third. We bought a small house with a porch and a backyard and a kitchen window that caught the morning light just right. I got promoted to senior accountant at a firm that did not know my family and did not ask about them. We built a life that did not include my parents, but we still showed up for holidays and birthdays and the occasional Sunday dinner because I had not yet learned that showing up was not the same as being welcome. Every time we walked through their front door, I felt myself shrink a little. Not because anyone yelled at me or called me names, but because of the quiet things. The way my mother would compliment Allison's new haircut and then glance at me and say nothing. The way my father would ask Sam about his little business as if it was a hobby instead of a livelihood. The way Allison would talk about her plans, her dreams, her future, while I sat there with my stable job and my steady husband and my small house that I loved, feeling like I was watching my own life from outside a window. I told myself I was being too sensitive. I told myself that this was just how families worked, that someone always got less, that I should be grateful for what I had. But gratitude, I have learned, is a complicated thing. It can keep you warm, and it can also keep you still. And I was very, very still. It happened at Thanksgiving. 18 people crammed into my parents' dining room. The table extended to its full length with leaves that had not been used since the last family wedding. Aunts, uncles, cousins, a few family friends who had nowhere else to go. The kind of crowd where someone is always refilling the iced tea and nobody notices when the conversation turns sharp because everyone is too busy talking over each other. Allison pulled me aside in the kitchen while my mother was basting the turkey and my father was carving something at the counter. She needed $6,000. It was the 4th time she had asked. The first 3 loans, her word not mine, were still unpaid. She said the money was for inventory for a clothing boutique she was opening, a little shop downtown that she had been talking about for months. She said it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, that the space would not stay on the market much longer, that she just needed a little help to get it off the ground. I said no. I said it calmly, clearly, the way you say no to someone who has already proven they do not pay you back. Allison stared at me for a moment, her mouth slightly open, like she was waiting for me to take it back. When I did not, she turned and walked back into the living room. A few minutes later, I followed. She was standing by the fireplace with her eyes wet and her chin trembling. My father stood up from his recliner like he had been spring-loaded, like he had been waiting for this exact signal. "What kind of sister refuses to help her own blood?" he said loud enough for the room to hear. Aunt Marie froze with a serving spoon in midair. My cousin Jessica looked at me with wide eyes. Uncle Paul stopped chewing. The room went quiet, the way a room goes quiet when someone says something that everyone knows is unfair, but no one is willing to say so out loud. "You have changed, Lauren," my father said, shaking his head slowly, "and not for the better." Then my mother leaned toward my aunt, close and deliberate, and said just loud enough for half the table to hear, "She has been like this ever since she got involved with that man. I honestly think she needs to talk to someone professionally." The room went still. 18 people. Not one opened their mouth. Aunt Marie looked down at the floor. Uncle Paul coughed and reached for a dinner roll. Jessica stared at me like she wanted to speak, but did not know how. I stood in the center of that room and felt something I had not felt since graduation day. Invisible. Surrounded by people and completely alone. Not because they were cruel, but because they were comfortable. Comfortable with the story my parents had told them. Comfortable with the version of me that was difficult, ungrateful, unstable. comfortable enough to sit there in silence, while my mother suggested I needed professional help, and my father called me a disappointment in front of everyone I had grown up with. I put on my coat. I kissed my cousin Jessica's toddler on the head. Sam was already at the door, keys in hand, jaw tight. He did not say a word. He just held the door open, and I walked through it. I walked out of that house, and I did not go back. Silence is a strange thing. You would think it would feel empty, like a room with no furniture, like a page with no words. But silence is not empty. Silence is full of the things other people fill it with. Within weeks of that Thanksgiving dinner, my parents had a story, and they told it to everyone who would listen. My father called relatives. My mother cornered friends at church, in the grocery store, at the post office. The narrative was clean and simple, the kind of story that fits neatly into a text message or a whispered conversation over coffee. Lauren is mentally unwell. Sam is isolating her from the family. She needs professional help, but she refuses to get it. My cousin Jessica called me in January. Her voice was careful, the way people sound when they are not sure if they are about to step on a crack in the sidewalk. "Your mom told me you are seeing a therapist," she said. "She said you had some kind of episode at Thanksgiving. Are you okay?" I had never told anyone I was seeing a therapist, because I was not. My mother had invented it out of thin air and served it to people who trusted her, and they had swallowed it without chewing. It got worse. My father called my former boss, a man I had worked for during college, to check in on me. In a town that small, a call like that is not concern. It is a grenade wrapped in good intentions. My father told my boss that he was worried about me, that I had been acting strange, that he thought I might be a danger to myself. Those were his words. He used serious mental health language against his own daughter, because she had refused to hand over $6,000 and sit quietly while her mother called her broken in front of the whole family. The calls stopped. Aunts I used to hear from at Easter, cousins who sent birthday texts, family friends who had watched me grow up. The circle pulled tight around my parents like a drawstring, and I was on the outside of it. By spring, the only person from my old life who still called was Jessica. Sam and I moved to a town 40 minutes west, close enough to drive back if I ever wanted to, far enough that I did not have to see my father at the hardware store on Saturday mornings. I got promoted to senior accountant at a firm that did not know my family and did not ask. Sam's business grew. We bought a small house with a porch and a garden and a kitchen window that caught the morning light. It was a quiet life, a good life. But every Thanksgiving I would catch myself staring at my phone, scrolling through old contacts, hovering over names I could not bring myself to delete. No one called. Not once. Sam never pushed me. He would sit with me on the couch, some game on mute, and just be there. One night I asked him, "Do you think I made a mistake?" He did not hesitate. "You will know when you are ready," he said. "And if that day never comes, that is okay too." 2 years passed like that. Ordinary days stacked on top of each other. I was healing slowly, unevenly, but healing. And then, on a Tuesday in March, an envelope arrived. The envelope had a law firm's return address I had never seen before, and it was addressed specifically to Lauren Cole. Not to current resident, not to the estate of, but to me by name, typed in clean black letters on a white label. That envelope sat on my kitchen counter for 2 full days before I opened it. 2 years of silence, and then a letter from a lawyer. If you have ever cut contact with someone in your family and then gotten that unexpected call or letter, you know the feeling. That cold drop in your stomach. That instant calculation of all the worst possibilities. I opened it at the kitchen table on a Thursday morning while Sam was already out on a job. The coffee was still hot. The house was quiet. The letter was from a man named Mr. Harrison, an attorney based in my parents' town. Professional letterhead, clean font, 1 page. It stated that my father, Richard Cole, was initiating the sale of a residential property at 42 Hickory Lane. That was Grandpa Walter's lakeside cabin. The letter went on to say that as a potential heir to the estate of Walter Cole, I was being asked to sign a quitclaim deed waiving any claim to the property. There was a signature line at the bottom, a 30-day deadline, and a phone number for Mr. Harrison's office. I read it 3 times. 2 years. Not a birthday card. Not a how are you. Not even a forwarded email about a family reunion or a cousin's wedding. The first time my family reached out to me, it was through a lawyer, and they were asking me to hand over the last place Grandpa Walter had ever called home. I set the letter down and looked across the kitchen at the small wooden shelf Sam had built above the stove. On it sat Grandpa Walter's old tackle box. Cedarwood, brass hinges, his initials carved into the lid. He had left it to me in his will, and it still smelled like lake water and linseed oil. Inside that tackle box, tucked against the bottom in a clear plastic sleeve, was a sealed envelope I had kept for 6 years. I had found it when I was clearing out his things after the funeral. Yellowed paper, taped shut, his handwriting on the front in that slanted, deliberate script. For Lauren, when you need it. I had never opened it. I thought it was a goodbye letter. Something sentimental, something that would make me cry and then sit on a shelf for the rest of my life. But that Thursday morning, with my father's lawyer's letter still warm in my hands, I decided it was time. I pulled the tackle box down from the shelf, carried it to the kitchen table, and sat there in the morning light with the cedar smell and the brass hinges and the weight of 6 years of waiting. My hands were steady until I tore the seal. Inside Grandpa Walter's envelope were 2 things. The first was a legal document, heavy paper, stamped and notarized. The heading read, Revocable Trust Deed, Walter R. Cole Family Trust. Below it, in clean type, the property at 42 Hickory Lane was listed. The document stated that the cabin had been transferred into an irrevocable trust before Grandpa Walter's death. The trustee was a man named Mr. Callahan, Grandpa Walter's personal attorney for over 30 years, and the sole beneficiary, named on page 3, was me, Lauren Cole. The second item was a single sheet of notebook paper, folded twice, yellowed at the edges. His handwriting slanted and deliberate, the way a man writes when his hands are strong but his patience with pens is limited. It said, Lauren, I know your father. He means well, but he does not see straight when it comes to your sister. This cabin is yours. It has always been yours. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. Love, Grandpa W. I sat on the kitchen floor with my back against the cabinet and I cried. Not the kind of crying that breaks you apart. The kind that puts something back together. He knew. Before I ever walked out of that Thanksgiving dinner. Before I ever met Sam. Before I ever stopped answering my father's calls. Grandpa Walter saw it. All of it. And he did not just feel sorry for me. He did something about it. Sam came home that night and found me sitting there on the kitchen floor, papers spread across the tile, tears still wet on my face. He did not ask what was wrong. He just sat down on the floor beside me, put his hand on my shoulder, and did not say a word. After a while, I handed him the letter. He read it slowly, carefully, the way he reads wiring diagrams when he wants to be sure he understands every connection. Then he looked at me and said, What do you need? Not what are you going to do? Not are you sure about this? Just what do you need? That is when I knew I was not alone anymore. I had not been alone for a long time. I just had not let myself feel it. The next morning, I called Mr. Callahan, Grandpa Walter's attorney. He answered on the second ring, and his voice was exactly as I remembered it from the funeral 6 years ago, calm and measured, the voice of a man who had been practicing law since before I was born. I told him about the letter from my father's lawyer, about the quitclaim deed, about the 30-day deadline. He listened without interrupting, and when I finished, he said, The trust is valid. It has never been challenged, and your father's name does not appear anywhere in the documents. The cabin was transferred into the trust 3 years before Walter passed away. It never went through probate. Your father never inherited it. He just assumed he did, and no one ever told him otherwise because the only person who knew was your grandfather. He paused, and then he said, He saw you, Lauren. He always saw you. I thanked him and asked him to prepare certified copies of the trust deed, the original filing, the county stamp, the beneficiary schedule, everything. He said he would have it ready by Thursday, and then he asked carefully, Do you want me to be present at the meeting with your father's attorney? I thought about it for a moment. I thought about my father sitting across from me in a conference room, the way he would lean back in his chair and fold his arms and wait for me to fold. I thought about my mother's tight smile and my sister's wet eyes, and I said, No, but I want you available by phone. He said, Understood. I called Mr. Harrison's office that afternoon. The receptionist answered with the kind of voice that tells you she has already decided what you are there for. Are you calling to return the signed document, Miss Cole? She asked. No, I said. I would like to come in. I have some questions about the document before I sign. There was a pause, a keyboard clicking, and then she said, Mr. Harrison is available Friday at 10. Friday works, I said. I hung up and sat at my kitchen table with the document spread out in front of me. Grandpa Walter's trust deed, his handwritten letter, the envelope it came in, the county filing receipt, the business card with Mr. Callahan's direct number circled in pen. I spent the next 5 days doing something I had not done in 2 years. I prepared, not emotionally. I was past that. I prepared the way an accountant prepares for an audit. Documents in order. Facts in rows. Nothing left to assumption. I read the trust deed front to back 3 times. I pulled the county clerk's filing records online to confirm the transfer date. I compared it against the probate records from Grandpa Walter's estate and confirmed what Callahan had told me. The cabin had been transferred into the trust before Walter died. It was never part of the estate. My father had no legal claim to it, and he never had. On Thursday night, Sam asked me if I wanted him to come along to the meeting. I shook my head. "This one is mine," I said. He kissed my forehead and handed me a thermos of coffee for the drive. The next morning, I set Grandpa Walter's tackle box on the passenger seat, the one that still smelled like cedar and lake water. I tucked the folder of trust documents into my bag, and I drove 40 minutes back to the town I had left behind, back to the place where my family had decided I was the villain of their story, back to a conference room where I was about to show them that Grandpa Walter had written a different ending. Harrison's office sat on the second floor of a red brick building on Main Street, above a dental practice that had been there since I was a child. The stairwell smelled like old carpet and coffee that had been sitting on a warmer since dawn. The receptionist, a woman in her 50s with reading glasses on a chain, looked me up and down when I gave my name. "Have a seat, Miss Cole. Mr. Harrison will be with you shortly." There was something in her tone. Not rude exactly. More like rehearsed sympathy, the kind of voice people use when they have already heard a version of your story and decided who the villain is. I sat in a vinyl chair next to a fern that was losing the will to live. I opened my bag and checked the folder one more time. Trust deed. Certified copy. County filing receipt. Callahan's card with his number circled. Grandpa Walter's handwritten letter sealed in a clear sleeve. Everything accounted for. I closed the folder and rested my hands on top of it. My heart was steady. My breathing was even. I had spent 2 years being called unstable by people who could not keep a clothing store open for 18 months. I could handle a conference room. The hallway clock ticked past 9:58. A phone rang somewhere behind the front desk. I heard a door open. "Ems Cole." Harrison's voice was polished, mid-50s, silver at the temples, the kind of man who says, "Let's get this squared away," and expects it to happen. He stepped aside and gestured toward the conference room. I stood, tucked my bag over my shoulder, and walked through the door. And there, sitting at the far end of the table in a pressed shirt with his hands folded in front of him, was my father. Richard looked up when I walked in. Same jaw, same posture, same way of holding a room like he had already measured it and found it acceptable. "Hello, Lauren." His voice was calm, gentle even. The concerned father register, pitched just low enough to sound caring, just controlled enough to remind you who was in charge. I stopped 2 steps inside the doorway and looked at Harrison. "I was told this was a meeting between me and your office." Harrison adjusted his tie. "Mr. Cole asked to be present. I thought it might facilitate things." "Facilitate," I repeated. "The way you hold up a garment in the wrong size, study it, and set it back on the rack." I sat down across from my father. I set my bag on the chair beside me. I placed my folder on the table. I did not open it. Richard leaned forward, elbows on the mahogany, and smiled. "Let's get this done quick. I know you're busy." "I am," I said. "Look," he said, tilting his head in a way that was supposed to look conciliatory. "I know things have been difficult, but this isn't about us. This is about the cabin. Your grandfather would have wanted this." He used Grandpa Walter's name. He sat across from me in a lawyer's conference room, the first time we had been in the same space in 2 years, and he used the name of the one person who ever stood in my corner to try to move me out of it. My fingers rested on the edge of my folder. That was when I knew this was never going to end unless I ended it. Not with anger, not with a scene, with the truth. Sitting in a manila folder on a conference table waiting to be read, Richard straightened in his chair and clicked into sales mode, the same cadence he used at the bank when explaining loan terms to people who did not read fine print. "The cabin has been sitting empty for years. No one is using it. I have a buyer ready to close at $310,000. Your sister's business needs a bridge loan, and this solves the problem clean." Harrison slid a document across the table. I looked down at it. Quitclaim deed in bold at the top, a signature line at the bottom with my name typed beneath it. I picked it up and read it slowly. Every word, every clause. The room was quiet except for my father tapping his index finger against the table, a rhythm he probably did not know he was making. I set the document down. "You haven't asked me how I am." Richard blinked. What? In 2 years, this is the first contact, and it came through a law firm. You didn't call, you didn't write. You sent a lawyer. He shifted in his seat. We have been trying to reach you. My phone number hasn't changed. Harrison cleared his throat. Richard ignored him. Lauren, I'm not here to rehash the past. I'm here to handle a piece of property. That's all. And if I don't sign, the tapping stopped. Richard's jaw tightened the way it always did when someone challenged a number on his spreadsheet. Then we all wait longer. It costs everyone more money. Don't make this complicated, Lauren. Don't make this complicated. The same man who told 18 people I was mentally unwell. The same man who skipped my graduation. The same man who called my husband a downgrade. Don't make this complicated. I leaned back in my chair. Before I do anything, I would like to understand why I was not told about the sale before a lawyer sent me a letter. The expression shifted. Not a crack exactly, but a recalibration. He turned to Harrison the way a man turns to a witness stand. We haven't been able to reach her, he said, not to me, to the lawyer. She cut off the entire family 2 years ago. No explanation. No explanation. Patricia and I have tried everything. Richard shook his head slowly, performing sadness the way he performed everything with structure. She has been going through a difficult time. He was doing it again. The same playbook, same stage directions. Tell the room I am broken. Make the room feel sorry for him. Harrison was writing something on his legal pad. I could not see it. Her husband, Richard added, dropping his voice a notch, has been a bit controlling. We worry about her environment. I felt my pulse tick up, not from fear, from the precision of it. 2 years later, and the script had not changed by a single word. He had rehearsed it so many times it sounded like gospel. Harrison set his pen down and glanced at me. I could see the question forming behind his eyes. Is this true? I did not defend myself. I did not correct the record. I did not list the receipts. I looked at my father, held his gaze, and said, Are you done? Something shifted in his face. The smile did not disappear. It froze, like a projector catching on a frame. I had seen my father handle resistance before. Employees, loan applicants. Me, when I was younger. He had never seen me stop resisting. Richard's phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at the screen and held up a finger. 1 second, he answered. The speaker was not on, but in a room that quiet, with the kind of cheap speakerphone Richard owned, you did not need it. Allison's voice came through, sharp and thin. Did she sign yet? Dad, I need to know by Monday. The landlord is threatening to change the locks. Richard cupped his hand over the phone. I'm handling it. Give me an hour. But Allison was already mid-sentence. Just tell her it's for the family. She always caves when you say that. The words landed in the center of the table like a glass hitting hardwood. Richard pulled the phone from his ear and ended the call. His neck flushed red from the collar up. Harrison was looking at his legal pad. I folded my hands. She always caves when you say that, I repeated quietly, word for word. Richard set the phone face down. She is under a lot of pressure. Don't take it. I am not taking anything. I am just listening. I looked at Harrison. He still had not looked up, but the pen in his hand had stopped moving. This was a negotiation my father had prepared for. Push the paper across the table. Invoke Grandpa Walter's name. Wait for the obedient daughter to sign. Drive home by noon. Instead, he was sitting in a room where his youngest daughter had just confirmed, out loud, to a witness, that the whole thing was a performance, a machine. Push the lever. Watch Lauren fold. I did not fold. And in that small silence after Allison's voice faded and the room reset itself, I made a decision. They were not getting a signature. They were getting a conversation they should have had 2 years ago. Richard stood up. The chair screeched against the floor. Lauren, I have been patient. Sign the paper. He pointed at the quitclaim deed like it was a ledger that did not balance. This cabin means nothing to you. You haven't been there in years. You are right, I said. I have not. Because the last time I visited, you told my husband he was a downgrade. Richard waved his hand. That was a joke. It was not funny. 3 words. I let them sit there. Richard pressed both palms flat on the table. You know what your problem is? You hold grudges. Your mother was right. You need help. Professional help. Harrison raised a hand. Mr. Cole, let's keep this productive. Richard did not look at him. His eyes were locked on me. If you don't sign this, he said, voice dropping into the register he used to deny loan applications, I will take legal action. I will file a quiet title motion. A judge will make you sign. I turned to Harrison. Can he do that? Harrison shifted. There are legal avenues, but let's not get ahead of. Okay, I said. Both men stopped. Okay, I reached for my bag and pulled the folder onto the table. The room felt like the second before a fuse catches. Before we go any further, I said, I have something I would like to show you. I watched my father's eyes drop to the folder. He did not know what was in it. Neither did Harrison, but something in the air changed. The way a room changes when the person who is supposed to be losing stops acting like it. I unclipped the folder and opened it. I set the first page face up on the table. The document slid across the mahogany with the soft hiss of good paper on polished wood. Richard looked down. The bold header was impossible to miss. Irrevocable Trust Deed, Walter R. Cole Family Trust. This is an irrevocable trust deed, I said, filed 7 years ago by Walter Cole with the county clerk's office. It names me, Lauren Cole, as sole beneficiary of the cabin property. The trustee is Mr. Callahan, Grandpa Walter's attorney. I pushed the full document, all 8 pages, certified copy with the county stamp on the front, to the center of the table. You are welcome to read it. The silence that followed had weight. It pressed against the walls of that conference room like a held breath. Richard did not touch the papers. His eyes moved from the document to my face and back again, as though he was waiting for one of them to explain the other. Harrison reached for the trust deed immediately. He turned to the first page. Read it. Turn to the second. Read that too. Then he removed his glasses, pressed the bridge of his nose, and set the document down very carefully, as though it might detonate. He looked at Richard with the expression of a man who's just realized the ground underneath the conversation has shifted. Mr. Cole, he said, and the formality in his voice was new, were you aware that your father established an irrevocable trust for this property? Richard's mouth opened, closed, opened again. That can't be right. The cabin was part of his estate. It came to me through probate. Harrison picked up the trust deed again, turned to the filing page, and read the date. According to this document, the property was transferred to the trust 3 years before your father passed away. If this is accurate, and the county filing stamp suggests it is, the cabin would not have passed through probate. It would have been excluded from the estate entirely. Richard stared. That's impossible. The county clerk's office would have the original on file, Harrison continued, speaking now with the deliberate calm of a man measuring every word for liability. I would recommend verifying, but this copy appears properly executed and notarized. Richard turned to me. His face had gone the color of old drywall. Where did you get this? From Grandpa Walter. He would never, Richard's voice cracked along the seam. He wouldn't go behind my back like this. I held his gaze. He didn't go behind your back. He protected his granddaughter. I paused. There is a difference. The conference room was the quietest place in town. The clock on the wall ticked. Somewhere outside, a truck downshifted on Main Street. Richard slowly sat back down. His hands, which had been pointing and commanding and tapping all morning, lay flat on the table. They were shaking. Harrison loosened his tie 1/2 inch and turned to me. Ms. Cole, do you have contact information for the trustee? I handed him Callahan's card. Harrison dialed the number on the conference room speaker. It rang twice. Callahan's voice came through, measured, unhurried, the voice of a man who had been expecting this call for 7 years. Harrison identified himself and asked the question directly. Mr. Callahan, can you confirm the existence and validity of an irrevocable trust established by Walter Cole regarding the property at 42 Hickory Lane? I can, Callahan said. I drafted it myself. The trust was executed and filed with the county 7 years ago. Walter Cole funded it with the cabin property during his lifetime. Lauren Cole is the sole named beneficiary. The property has never been part of the Walter Cole estate and did not pass through probate. Harrison wrote quickly. Richard sat motionless. Is the trust currently active and unchallenged? Harrison asked. Active and unchallenged, Callahan said. I serve as trustee. Harrison thanked him and ended the call. Then he turned to Richard with the careful posture of a man delivering news he did not want to deliver. Mr. Cole, I am going to have to pause this proceeding. The quitclaim deed I prepared is not applicable. And Miss Cole has no claim to waive because the property was never in your father's estate to begin with. Richard shook his head slowly. That's my family's cabin. I grew up there. I understand, Harrison said. But legally, as of 7 years ago, it belongs to the trust, and the sole beneficiary is your daughter. He paused, and his voice dropped slightly. Mr. Cole, I should also mention that if you have represented to the buyer that you hold clear title to this property, that could create a separate legal issue. Richard pushed back from the table. The chair legs stuttered against the floor. You planned this, he said, his voice tight, strung between accusation and something closer to fear. You have been sitting on this for 7 years waiting. I didn't plan anything. My voice did not rise. I did not even open that envelope until your lawyer sent me a letter. You brought me here, Dad. The word hit the room wrong. Dad. I had not called him that in 2 years, and it landed heavier than I expected. For both of us. Richard pressed the heels of his hands into his eyes. When he pulled them away, I saw something I had not prepared for. He looked old, not just tired, diminished. Like someone had pulled a thread and the whole pattern was unraveling. Lauren, he said, and his voice cracked down the center, you don't understand. If I cannot sell that cabin, your sister's business, I co-signed everything. Your mother and I refinanced the house. We could lose it. Our house. I heard the desperation. I did. And part of me, the part that had spent 18 years trying to earn his attention, wanted to reach across the table. But I stayed where I was. You co-signed Allison's business loans, I said. You refinanced your mortgage for her store. You put everything on the line for her. And in all that time, you never once called to ask how I was doing. Richard's mouth opened, but nothing came out. And now, I said, you want me to give up the one thing Grandpa Walter left me so you can fix a problem I was not part of creating. He would have wanted us to be a family. He would have wanted you to be a father to both your daughters. The room held its breath. Harrison gathered his legal pad and stood. He had the posture of a man trying to leave a room without tripping anything. I think it is best we adjourn, he said. Mr. Cole, I would recommend consulting with a trust litigation attorney regarding your options. And Miss Cole, you are free to go. I stood. I collected the trust documents and placed them back in my folder. The quitclaim deed still sat in the center of the table, unsigned, like a check that had bounced. Richard did not move. He sat with his hands flat on the table, staring at the grain of the wood as if the answer might be somewhere in the mahogany. Lauren. I stopped at the door. Please. One word. Stripped of posture, stripped of strategy. Just a man in a conference room who had run out of moves. I looked at him, and for a second, just a second, I saw the version of him from before. The man who taught me to ride a bike on Hickory Lane. The man who let me steer the boat even though I always went too far left. The man who once, when I was 7, carried me a quarter mile through the rain because I had lost my shoe in the mud and he did not want me walking barefoot. That man existed. He just got buried somewhere under the spreadsheets and the favoritism and the fear of Allison failing. You know my number, I said. It hasn't changed. I walked through the lobby, past the receptionist, down the stairwell that smelled like old carpet, out the front door. I sat in my car for 5 minutes, engine off, hands on the wheel. I did not feel victorious. I felt tired. The kind of tired that 2 years of silence does not fix. But the meeting was not the end. It was just the beginning of something I had not expected. Richard did not drive home after the meeting. He drove to the cabin, and he brought Patricia and Allison with him. Jessica called me that evening. Her voice had the careful pitch of someone trying not to alarm you while delivering alarming news. Your dad drove out to the lake after the meeting. Your mom and Allison are with him. They are inside. I was standing at my kitchen counter, still in the blouse I had worn to Harrison's office. Sam looked up from the stove. They cannot sell it, I said. They cannot transfer it. Legally, there is nothing they can do. I know, Jessica said. But your dad told your mom it is their family home and no piece of paper changes that. I set the phone on the counter and stared at the ceiling. Sam turned the burner off. What do you want to do? Call Callahan. Callahan picked up on the first ring. I explained the situation. He listened without interrupting, a trait I was beginning to appreciate more than I could express. They cannot do anything to the property, he said. They cannot sell it, lease it, or encumber it. If they refuse to leave, I will send a formal demand letter. If they still refuse, we file for trespass. I closed my eyes. I do not want to have my father arrested at the cabin. Then let us hope he makes a smarter choice. I thanked him and hung up. Sam was watching me from across the kitchen, with the expression he wore when he had already figured out the wiring diagram, but was waiting for me to ask him to draw it. They will leave, he said. Your dad is a banker. At some point, the math is going to beat the pride. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that Richard Cole, a man who once refused to admit he had overcooked a steak for 45 minutes, would see reason. He did not. Not right away. Saturday morning, Jessica sent me a screenshot. Allison had posted a photo on Facebook, the cabin porch. Patricia holding a coffee mug. Richard standing behind her with his arms crossed, looking out at the water. The caption read, "Family time at Grandpa's cabin. Some things are worth fighting for." I stared at the photo for a long time. Allison was sitting in Grandpa Walter's chair, the green Adirondack he had built himself the summer I turned 10. I had sanded the armrests. He had let me paint the first coat and said I had a steadier hand than he did. That chair was the last place he sat before his legs got too stiff to make it down to the dock, and Allison was posing in it like a prop. The comments rolled in. A few relatives. "So glad you are all together." A neighbor. "That cabin holds so many memories." Nobody mentioned me. Nobody asked where I was. One cousin, a man named Eric, who I had not spoken to in a year, wrote, "Richard has every right. It is his father's cabin." I set my phone face down on the nightstand. Sam brought me coffee without being asked. "Callahan," I said. By Sunday afternoon, a certified letter was on its way to the cabin. Callahan also sent a copy via email for immediacy. The letter read, "You are currently occupying property held in irrevocable trust. This constitutes unauthorized use of trust property. You are hereby requested to vacate the premises within 72 hours. Richard was not dealing with a daughter anymore. He was dealing with a legal entity, a county filing, and a trustee who did not care about Christmas dinners or family loyalty or the fact that he had grown up on that property. Allison deleted the Facebook post by Sunday night. The 72-hour clock started ticking. Monday morning, with 41 hours left on the clock, my phone rang at 6:47 a.m., the kind of early that means someone either needs bail or believes urgency is a weapon. It was Patricia. I almost did not answer, but I did, because even after everything, there is a muscle in your chest that contracts when your mother calls. 2 years of silence does not atrophy it completely. Lauren. Her voice was raw. She had been crying, or she wanted me to think she had. With my mother, you could never quite tell. "Please, your father cannot sleep. Allison is going to lose everything. This is tearing our family apart." I sat on the edge of the bed. Sam was already awake beside me, eyes open, quiet. "This did not start with a trust document, Mom. I know we were not perfect, but is this really what you want? To take the cabin to punish us? I am not taking anything. It was already mine." A breath on the other end, sharp, offended. "And I am not punishing you. I am protecting what Grandpa Walter wanted. Your grandfather would not want this." Her voice went hard. "He would want us together. I have a letter from him that says otherwise." Silence, a long one. The kind where you can hear someone rearranging their entire understanding of a situation. "You have changed," she said finally. It was not a compliment. "I hope so," I said. The call ended without a goodbye. Patricia hung up the way she always exited a conversation she could not control, abruptly, so she could tell people later that the other person had been difficult. I set the phone down. Sam looked at me. "You okay?" I nodded. "She said I have changed." He almost smiled. About time someone noticed. They left on Monday afternoon. 53 hours, just under the wire. Jessica told me later that Harrison had called Richard one final time. "If you do not vacate, you are facing a trespass complaint, and given the trust documentation, you will not win." Richard packed the car. Patricia collected the dishes she had brought from home. Allison carried out a bag of groceries she had stocked the fridge with, like she was moving in for good. They drove away from the cabin the same way they had driven away from my life, without telling me, without looking back, without once considering that the cabin had never been theirs to claim. I did not go right away. I waited a full week. When I finally drove out to Hickory Lane, it was a Thursday afternoon. The sky was flat and gray, the kind of spring sky that cannot decide between rain and surrender. The front door was unlocked. Inside, the place smelled like dust and old pine. The kitchen was clean. Patricia had wiped down the counters before she left. The couch cushions were straight, the floors were swept. On the kitchen table, Richard had left a single key and a torn piece of lined paper. His handwriting was smaller than I remembered. "This was never about the money, Dad." I read it, folded it, and put it in my coat pocket. I did not know if it was true. I did not know if he believed it. I did not know if it mattered. I walked down to the dock. The boards creaked under my weight. Grandpa Walter's chair sat where it always had, facing the water, facing the tree line, facing everything and nothing. I sat in it. The lake was still. A heron crossed the cove, low and unhurried. And for the first time in 2 years, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The numbers caught up with Richard the way numbers always do, quietly and then all at once. Without the cabin sale, the $310,000 lifeline evaporated. The buyer walked away. Allison's boutique could not cover its next quarter's rent, and by June she closed the doors for good. She sold the inventory at 40 cents on the dollar to a liquidator from Chattanooga. Richard's personal guarantee came due. He sold his truck, the one he had driven since I was in high school, and pulled money from his retirement account early, eating the penalty. Between the two, he scraped together about $140,000, enough to settle the guarantee, not enough to undo the damage. His retirement, which he had planned for 62, got pushed to 67, maybe later. The mortgage he had refinanced still hung over the house on Birchwood like a permanent weather system. In a town that size, the story traveled. Not through gossip columns, but through driveways and church parking lots and the frozen food aisle at the grocery store. People started asking questions that Richard could not deflect with a firm handshake. Why did he not know about his own father's trust? Did Walter really cut him out? And that daughter, the one they said was unstable, she had the paperwork the whole time. Richard stopped going to Rotary Club breakfasts, stopped lingering at the bank after hours. He came and went through the side entrance and ate lunch at his desk. Jessica told me all of this in pieces, not to gloat, not because I asked. She told me because she thought I deserved to know how the story I had been exiled from was ending. I listened. I did not celebrate. I did not call Richard to say I told you so. There is no satisfaction in watching your father shrink. There is just the truth and the silence that follows it. Allison took a job as an assistant manager at a furniture store in the next town over. Not a bad job. Honest work. Steady hours. But a long fall from boutique owner, the title she had embroidered on her business cards and pinned to every conversation for 2 years. She did not post about it on Facebook. Patricia pulled back from everything. She stopped attending the women's Bible study group she had run for a decade. Stopped organizing the harvest potluck. Stopped showing up to Sunday brunch at the Millstone Cafe, where she had held court every weekend for as long as I could remember. Jessica told me why. People keep asking about you. How is Lauren? Have you heard from Lauren? Your mom does not know what to say anymore. The narrative she had built, poor Patricia, abandoned by her unstable daughter, suffering in silence, had developed cracks. The trust documents were public record. The timeline did not lie. And in a small town, when the facts start to outrun the fiction, the storyteller loses the room. I did not feel triumphant about any of it. I did not want my mother embarrassed. I just wanted her to stop rewriting my life for other people. 3 weeks after the boutique closed, my phone buzzed. A text from a number I had not seen in 2 years. Allison, I know you probably do not want to hear from me, but I am sorry about what I said on the phone that day. I read it sitting on the dock at the cabin, my feet dangling over the water. I did not respond right away, but I did not delete it. A week later, Jessica mentioned something else. Your dad asked about you. He wanted to know if you were doing okay. He did not ask me to pass it along. He just asked. I let that sit. The extended family came back in pieces. Not all of them.
Not all at once, but enough. Aunt Marie called first. She was the one who had looked at the floor during that Thanksgiving dinner. The one who heard Patricia call me unstable and said nothing.
I should have spoken up that night, she said. Her voice had the weight of someone who had been carrying a sentence she could not put down. I saw what was happening, and I did not say a word. I am sorry, Lauren. I thanked her. I meant it. I did not pretend it erased anything, and she did not ask me to. 2 cousins texted within the same week. One of them, a man named Marcus, wrote, I always felt something was off. I just did not know what it was. I understood that. I had lived inside the thing and I could not name it for years. How could I expect people on the outside to see it clearly? Not everyone came around. Uncle Paul still believed Richard's version. Cousin Eric, the one who had commented on Allison's Facebook post, never reached out. A few relatives went quiet entirely. Not hostile, just absent. The way people get when a story becomes too complicated to fit into a side. I did not chase anyone. I did not post a rebuttal. I did not send a family-wide email with receipts and timestamps. I just kept living. Senior accountant, cabin on weekends, Sam rewiring the porch lights, coffee on the dock in the mornings. People who needed to know the truth found it. People who did not want it stayed comfortable in the version they already had. I made peace with both. Not everyone will understand, and I stopped needing them to. Sam and I started fixing up the cabin in May. It was not a renovation, more like a conversation with the building, listening to what it needed, a fresh coat of stain on the dock, new screens on the porch. The bathroom faucet that had dripped since I was 12 finally got a new cartridge. Sam handled the electrical, replaced the ancient breaker panel, ran new wire to the kitchen, installed a porch light that actually turned on when you flipped the switch. It is what he does, he said, grinning, covered in attic dust. I found Grandpa Walter's woodworking tools in the garage, hanging on a pegboard he had built himself, each one in its place. Chisels lined up by size, hand planes oiled and wrapped. A half-finished birdhouse on the workbench, like he had stepped away for lunch and just never came back. In a box beneath the workbench, I found photographs. Me at 6 years old, standing on the dock with a base that was almost as long as my arm. Grandpa Walter behind me, both hands raised, laughing, his hat pushed back, his flannel rolled to the elbows. I held the photo for a long time. He did not leave me a cabin. He left me proof that I mattered, that someone in my family saw me clearly, not as the capable one, not as the low-maintenance one, not as the one who did not need anything, but as Lauren, his granddaughter, worth protecting. I framed the photo and hung it on the kitchen wall, right above the window where the afternoon light comes in warm and gold. Every time I look at it, I hear his voice on the phone the day I graduated. I already took care of it. He did. A month after the meeting at Harrison's office, I sat at the kitchen table in the cabin and wrote a letter by hand. Not through a law firm, not through Jessica. Just me and a pen and a piece of paper. I wrote it to Richard and Patricia. I am not writing to punish you. I am writing to be clear. The cabin stays in the trust. That was Grandpa Walter's decision, and I intend to honor it. I will not sell it, and I will not sign it away. If there is a version of our relationship that can be rebuilt, it does not start with paperwork. It starts with honesty. It starts with you seeing me, not as the capable one, not as the one who can handle it, not as the one who does not need anything, but as your daughter. My door is open, but only if you walk through it as my parents, not as people who need something from me. I addressed the envelope, stamped it, and dropped it in the mailbox at the end of Hickory Lane. I did not wait for a reply. I did not check the mailbox every morning hoping for one. I had said what I needed to say, and the rest was up to them. Sam read the letter before I sealed it, but he did not suggest a single change. He just nodded and said, "That is you." I used to think boundaries were walls, things you build when you are angry to keep people out. I do not think that anymore. Boundaries are doors. You choose who walks through. You choose the terms. And if someone stands on the other side and knocks with clean hands and an honest voice, you open it. But you do not leave it propped open for people who only show up when they need the key. It is a Friday afternoon when I finally understand what Grandpa Walter meant. I am sitting on the dock in his green Adirondack chair, the one I sanded when I was 10. The one I painted the first coat on, the one Allison posed in for a photo she later deleted. The wood is warm from the sun, the lake is flat. Somewhere across the cove, a fish breaks the surface and the ripple stretches out in slow, patient circles. Sam is inside making coffee. I can hear the kettle through the open window and the low hum of the porch light he installed last weekend. The breeze carries cedar and cut grass, and something sweet from the neighbor's honeysuckle. I have Grandpa Walter's fishing rod in my hands, the old one with the cork grip he wrapped himself, the reel that clicks when you cast. I have not caught anything all afternoon, and I do not care. I talk to him sometimes, not out loud, just in my head, the way you do with people who left the room but never really left. "Hey, Grandpa, I found your envelope. I found the trust. I found the letter." A pause. The wind answers. "Thank you." I look down at my hands. They are rough now, from sanding, from painting, from living. Not the hands of someone who is treated gently, the hands of someone who built what she has, one board at a time. My name is Lauren. I am 33 years old. 2 years ago, my parents' lawyer sent me one document. That document did not give me anything I did not already have. It just reminded me that someone had already decided I was worth protecting, and that was enough. If you made it all the way here, thank you. I mean that. This story is not about revenge. It is about knowing you deserve to be seen, even when the people closest to you refuse to look. If this story touched you, please take a moment to subscribe to this channel. I share stories like this every week. Stories of patience, of proof, of people who were underestimated and found a way to stand up. Hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you do not miss the next one. And here is my question for you. If you could write one letter to someone who underestimated you, what would it say? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. Thank you for listening. I am Lauren. This is the Quiet Revenge Book. Take care of yourselves. I will see you in the next story.